Hello, and thank you so much for taking the time out to listen. Today, I am letting the Lord lead me into a particular subject matter that for some of you all will be quite disturbing, but the reality is that when predictive programming shows you that something is about to happen, believe it. Predictive programming shows up time and time again in episodes of The Simpsons. Many of you all have come across episodes where things are predicted years in advance before they actually take place. One particular episode of The Simpsons goes all the way back to 2010, where there's this phony crisis that this secret society comes up with. Interesting enough, a lot of what is in that episode shows up in reality in 2020. In the Simpsons episode, it is a secret conclave of America's media empires releasing a deadly virus, and basically the point of releasing the deadly virus is to put Americans back where they belong, in dark rooms glued to their televisions, too terrified to skip the commercials. Mind you now, this was a Simpsons episode. The Simpsons was and still is a very popular cartoon series. So this phony crisis was created back in 2010 in an episode of The Simpsons. And even earlier, an episode from 1993, people were begging for a cure in this Simpson episode, which was called the Osaka flu. And in the episode, it came from Asia. And on top of that, these folks were attacked by killer bees. Now, 1993, there is this episode that shows up. 2010, there's this episode that shows up. 2020, people are begging for a cure for the Wuhan virus and are terrified of these murderous hornets, okay? Now, back then, when we were watching different episodes, we didn't think nothing of it, right? But then issues happen, and then before long, you start to say, wait a minute, is someone watching these episodes and being inspired to do some wicked things? Or are these plans being developed, and then these cartoon series shows up, and then these real events later take place? However the situations are occurring, the point is that it's sick, it's twisted, it's demented, and it's nothing more than demonic. Okay? It's nothing more than demonic. There are so many who don't want to believe that there are those who script events. They want to believe that things just happen. This is why you have those individuals that run around and say, hoax, this is phony, you people and all that. Then, of course, someone dies. The thing is that it's not so much that the actual event that's taking place is a hoax. It is the script behind what is taking place. The fact that it is not natural. It is unnatural. Someone has orchestrated the event, or group orchestrated the event to fulfill purposes that some have tripped up on. Others know full well because they've got connections to some of these real secret societies. And then there are those who just pray just like I do, right? They pray and God just reveals some things. God is not going to have his believers be ignorant, okay? He's not. If we're spending time with him, trusting in him and believing in him, eventually we are going to trip up into something in prayer, meditation, on a whole nother plane, spiritual level, or what have you, that's going to reveal the demonic, okay? And God will allow this sort of thing to happen for some of us so that we're prepared mentally, physically, spiritually. Sometimes he won't. He won't let us know too much of anything because it all falls into his divine plan. And some things you just don't need to know. Okay? Because for some of us, we would start freaking out if we knew every little itty bitty thing. We would be no earthly good. Okay? So I started thinking, and the Holy Spirit captivated my thoughts, my mind, if you will, by letting me know that when it comes to the secret societies, the occult, the elitists, they don't mind sacrificing members within the brotherhood or the family members of those that are in the brotherhood. Now stay with me. There are sacrifices that take place behind closed doors in different types of secret societies. And I've talked about this sort of thing with the satanic timeline that I brought to you months back because I knew we were going to end up having some sacrifices of all sorts. The Spirit had moved me to share that message. And yes, it's quite disturbing because human sacrifice is part of a lot of what stirs up the demonic and gets some power going. Okay. So you've got these people who are part of the brotherhood, whether it's a brotherhood that is comprised of police officers and firefighters and so forth. There's the brotherhoods where it's, primarily one ethnicity or another. There are those brotherhoods and sisterhoods that are faith-based, but have some dark spirits, if you will, that every now and again show up and show out. And then, of course, there are those that are part of those occultic groups where they're able to do some interesting things with their bodies. Okay. And some folks have seen their share of circus acts, if you will. And you were like blown away. Wow. Okay. So we got all sorts of people in all sorts of groups. But a lot of it comes back to a demonic sacrifice. Okay. It could be one sacrifice. It could be a mass sacrifice where the event takes place in front of everyone. Lord Jesus. When you are that one that watches something on television or elsewhere, and it is so gripping, I mean, it really hurts you. And it's the type of thing that you might even need some psychological counseling if you look at it enough times. What is it doing to you? It's upsetting you. It's changing your day-to-day routine. It's causing you to get very angry, irritable. You want to lash out. You want to do everything but what you are called to do. What you typically do before you saw it happen. Your mind is taken away from what God has moved you to do because you're so consumed with someone else that you don't even know. An event that you really don't understand. You're caught up in all of the legalities related to it. And so your mind gets caught up in this vortex, if you will, of confusion, of chaos. Now stay with me. The chaos, though, isn't a spiritual chaos that allows you to be free in Christ, right? Uplifts you, motivates you, gets you to do what you're called to do. Follow God's divine plan as a believer. No, instead, this type of chaos causes you not to be focused, not to be centered, not to be level-headed. And so you do things that you wouldn't ordinarily do. And you become a bit forgetful. You're not as effective at home or at work or a part of groups and so forth. Those that are in the know, those that are, there we say it, a bit intelligent. I mean, Satan's not dumb. He does recruit very intelligent people. Those that are in the know already know how what you're going to see is going to impact you. They know that if you see it enough times, that it will debilitate you in some area of your life. And if you are one who is vocal, you are an activist, you are out there in the community, you are an influencer, you are doing some great and mighty things, some kingdom business, the last thing they want is for you to be out here revealing things, making people mentally, physically, and spiritually strong when they want the masses to be weakened. Because when they're weakened, then we can be able to manipulate them into doing some other things. Come on now. Stay with me. Don't lose what you're getting from this message. Because as I've said in other audio, media events were going to come, and they were going to be the type of media events that would create distraction. You see, where I was telling some folks, if you're going to protest something, this was before all of this started taking place again in media with another sacrifice, another black man being sacrificed. I was telling some folks, focus in on businesses that are charging interest when you know that you don't have a job, and speak to them about your situation and seeing what you can do in terms of not having to pay that interest. Okay. Or being able to, even go without having to pay for a month or two or what have you, right? I mean, stirring up the pot, keeping some businesses closed too by not supporting them. They didn't have great prices when they were open. You best believe they don't plan on having that great of a price or prices on the things that you really like or really need. So why give them your business? Okay. Anytime we start talking about taking money from the man, come on. I mean, we can go back to some of Martin Luther King's radical messages, and then even some of the singers who decided to step away from singing and focus more on, empowering those who are impoverished, and getting them to think economically and all that. Interesting things had a way of taking place with those individuals, you see. And here I'm starting to, at the time, I'm starting to talk about this sort of thing. And I said, watch something happens to kind of distract, because I think spiritually, many of us were on that same wavelength. God was saying, this is what, and he still is saying, this is what we need to be talking about. They're charging you all usury, right? And they shouldn't be charging you usury during a time like this. But now you start focusing in on things that really, at the end of the day, are doing nothing more than creating division and upset and confusion. Therefore, you're off track and you're not going to be able to get what you want. There are those employees who are out there on the front lines protesting, but you don't get to hear what they're protesting about, because here we go. There's that distraction in media to keep you from thinking, from coming up with a solution, from doing something to better your life and your children's lives and so forth. People want to be paid more. That's the bottom line. If you want to reopen up businesses, reopen up the economy, you also need to reopen up that wallet and do something a bit differently that's going to pay people what they're worth. You see, this pandemic was portion people, if used correctly, was portion people toward changes for the people, by the people. Now, those that are used to paying people hardly anything to live on, they don't want you to be out there talking about you want more money. They don't want you out there talking about, I'm not paying interest anymore. They don't want you not going to their businesses where they got overpriced goods. You see, we got businesses out there who they want to continue to charge us ridiculous prices or even increase prices since the pandemic. and they want to make more money for money that has been lost. Some people are so hungry for money, so greedy, that they can't wrap their heads around the fact that, guess what? Just because certain parts of the economy have opened, and just because you're still making some money during this tough time, doesn't mean that people want to buy your product. Doesn't mean that everything is okay and all right with the people who you were accustomed to receiving money from. These big businesses, and even the small man who's got a little something, is not wrapping his head around the fact that things have changed. And he doesn't intend on giving anything free if he can help it. That's the last thing he wants to do. That's the last thing she wants to do, is have a buy one, get one, or 50% off. I've already lost money. I don't need to be losing any more money. I mean, for all of that, yeah, for all of that, that's why you are supposed to make sure that when times get bad, you got enough money that you can take care of yourself as well as your customers and everything else, and lighten up the load, not give them a heavier load. But we got some of these Pharaoh entrepreneurs, if you will, and Pharaoh investors, Pharaoh realtors, Pharaoh business owners, Pharaoh leaders, Pharaoh all across the board, where they're not interested in making life easier for those people in any way. I didn't particularly care for them because they always got something that they don't like. And they always are calling up, talking about this thing and that thing. And they should just be grateful. And I know it's a cheap product, but at least you get some type of use out of it. And they're charging ridiculous prices for these cheap products. But see, when you get, Lord Jesus, knowledge, and you realize what is happening, and you realize what your power is, then you're ready to do something. And when folks know that you're privy, they know that you're enlightened, they know that you're awakened, they come up with some things to try to get you all upset, because we know how you people are. Lord Jesus. You've been informed. You know what took place. You know the unfairness. You know the injustice. But then you also need to have that same fire focused in on what needs to get done when it comes to your money, when it comes to your job, when it comes to the things that matter to you on a day-to-day basis that you are familiar with, that you know all too well. When you realize your power, you're going to get off of whatever media story that they hyped up and get on with the story that you know that's going to free you out of your situation. When I saw that some things were shifting in the atmosphere, and I saw that some folks weren't stepping it up during this pandemic, I said, I will not offer my service any longer. I will not allow the enemy to take advantage of me. I am not going to be the one that sits up there and continues to fatten up people's pockets. And if I am so essential, as some claim that I am, then you give me some essential money then. You see, when people raise up a standard, which some of them are, that's why they're not returning back to workplaces. Oh, you mean to tell me that you can sit up here and you can come up with some money when you feel like coming up with some money to pay people, even if it is a temporary time. But yet all that time that I was there, you couldn't come up with any money to increase my wages? You see, people start to sit back and they start thinking and see, with this business of stimulus checks and, you know, these other ways of getting money slowly but surely wrapping it up, and there's no relief in sight after these systems and payouts and so forth are wrapped up. What do you think's going to happen? It's going to be another wave of angry people. And maybe, just maybe, they'll get a clue that I'm not going to be focusing on yet another media story about somebody being gunned down or somebody, being murdered or something like that. No, I'm going to focus in on, even though that is important. But I got to focus in on feeding my family and making sure we got a roof over our heads. See, some of these businesses are going to use this as an opportunity coming up where people are going to be so this is what they're hoping for. They're going to be so desperate for a job that they're willing to be paid $8, $9, and $10. You see, oh, well, I'll just take, these small wages until something comes through. You see. And then that's going to frustrate some people. And before long, it's not going to be about the injustice of this situation and that one and how, justice needs to be served. It's going to be about, okay, wait a minute. You all are looking to save some money again. You all are looking to take from us again. You barely paid us what we was worth before this pandemic. And you think we're desperate enough to want to show up and get paid these measly wages? And if some folks can hold out like they had you staying at home during those months, if you can hold out in terms of serving these businesses, especially these non-essential ones, right? That's what they called you. They called the businesses non-essential workers. If you can hold out as long as you possibly can, these companies will be so desperate that they will be like, okay, we got to come up with something that's going to pay these people what they're worth. Because see, there's the headaches that you're coming into. And that's what some folks know all too well. You thought you had a headache before the pandemic. You're really going to have one because now you got folks sitting up here talking about, I don't need to wear a face mask. Or you got people who's talking about, look, we need some money for this organization, so we just going to break some rules and let, some folks come in and, hey, they'll just eat at their own risk. They'll amuse themselves at their own risk. Yeah, it's going to be close quarters. Yeah, there's going to be folks, touching each other, breathing on each other, whatever, but we need to make this money. And so rules are going to be broken. I'm seeing it in the spiritual realm. Here comes the prophetic. So between the rules being broken, folks not wanting to do what they need to do in order to stay safe, people concerned about money, folks not wanting to pay people what they're worth, there's going to be some ugly, and this is why law enforcement is preparing as well as military and so forth. Because it's not going to be these peaceful, prosperous, fun times for long for many individuals, especially with the predicted flu/coronavirus season coming up. Another thing that some of you all, when you're once again being distracted, knowing full well that the occultists, the evil elitists, and all these other individuals are once again trying to navigate your future, you're going to need to make sure that when it comes to faith-based worship, especially in many of these churches and elsewhere, synagogues, temples, you name it, that you are not being subjected to anything that sounds like power and control or the government up to something. If that means that you got to stay at home and worship among your family, then that's what you do. Because a lot of times, anytime you've got an organization that's relying on the government for monies, okay, they are going to navigate the ministers and those in the know, the board or what have you, in such a way where their messages come across. And being that it's an election year, do you really think you're going to get the word from the Lord or the word from the government? Come on. So if you are that type that don't mind cutting out the middleman, at least during this season, then that's what you do. You don't need the middleman to preach to you about what's in the word of God. You allow the Lord to lead you toward the word of the Lord in the Bible, I'm saying, as he sees fit, because there's a lot of information that God has given and it's not sounding like Bible. And that's what they evil elitists, occultists, people who are a part of the demonic, don't want you to deviate from. No, the Bible is your friend, buddy. You want to keep reading those same old stories. Okay. Every story you learn something new, right? And you get so caught up and so engrossed in that Bible that you miss common sense and you miss wisdom and you miss where God is taking you and how it is, how what he's doing is impacting your day-to-day living. Because see, to have a relationship with the Lord isn't just about reading the Bible. But to have a true relationship with the Lord, he is moving, he is navigating, he is showing you what you can do to meet the desires of your heart. And the desires of your heart for many of you all is to be paid better wages. So where's the protest for that? The desires of your heart is to be able to have that free health care. Where is that protest? The desires of your heart is to stop being mistreated, disrespected, disregarded at the workplace. Where's the protest for that? The desires of your heart is to one day own a home, own a car. How come we're not seeing a significant cut in real estate, a significant cut in car purchases? No, don't give me some little 6-month deferred payment, whatever. No, give me a reduction on the cost of something that depreciates as soon as I drive it off the lot. Come on now. Where's the protest for those things? Or what about, so if you all are talking about as parents, we're supposed to be paying for all these different supplies and they're going to be cutting funding with the schools and all this. Well, then I don't see why I need to be sending my child to a building then. I'll just let my child stay at home with the whole online school system then. Because it seems like that's what they're trying to do, is get some more money from folks who's already strapped. Nobody said cut any school funding. If anything, you leave that alone. But you see, we once again are distracted or moved away from the things that affect us. And what about groceries? Come on now. They keep telling us about, groceries, the grocery costs are increasing. Yeah, because, there's more people who are staying at home and they're cooking, right? Okay, well, if groceries are increasing in leaps and bounds, where's the protest for that? Because some folks can simply say, no, instead of buying up everything in the store, we're just going to use what we got until we don't have anything else. Okay, and let them suffer at the grocery stores. Oh, you want to jack up prices like you're doing? Okay, because you think we're so desperate that we're going to stockpile on everything? Oh, well, no, we're not. And thanks for opening up the restaurants, you see, because then if you take a look at the drive-thrus and so forth, if the prices are still reasonable, you can just give your money over to, some of those local, I didn't say those big chains, but local restaurants. But we got some work to do, and I've already been navigating my money from one place to another place because I'm not playing it. I'm not playing it, and I'm shopping around. My goal is to get some reductions on some expenses by shopping around because, desperate times calls for desperate measures, and there's some folks who they really want to keep their businesses flourishing, and they're willing to give some pretty good deals, reasonable deals, and not the type of deals that, okay, after 6 months, we're going to charge you full price plus interest. You see, Lord Jesus. So those of you all who see what's happening in media, once again, the distractions are there to keep you from paying attention to the simple things that's going on. Another thing is that when it comes to all of this death that's taking place, because we already know it's inevitable. Whenever they come up with these plans, the demonic demands a blood sacrifice. And so many blood sacrifices before men and women is pleasing to the dark side. And occultists and evil elitists know this. So if this is what it's going to be about, at least have life insurance policies then. out on different family members, friends, what have you. Because you see, it may be dark, it may be morbid, but if folks are going to be spending up money, if folks are going to be, not going to work, or they're so caught up in sickness or what have you, the smartest thing that you could do is to have a life insurance policy that's going to be able to take care of those bills when that person leaves. Because we got a lot of folks that no matter what we said, even before pandemic, we told them, eat healthier, watch your weight, watch your consumption, exercise, give up the bad habits, the drugs, the alcohol, the smoking, or what have you. They still insist on doing these things. Don't be a fool and not have a life insurance policy. Okay? Since they want to be rebellious, they want to be stubborn, they want to turn their backs on the one true God himself, they don't want to listen to wise counselors, then be the smart one and find a life insurance policy where you could at least get some money when they pass away. Okay. I was told a long time ago, and I wasn't doing any of the drugs and alcohol and all this other stuff, but what I was doing was dating, and I ended up coming across a person who was dangerous. And my grandmother had told me, she said, I've talked to your mother. And some of you all, you're familiar if you listen to my audio long enough. I talked to your mother, she said, and I told her that she needs to take out a life insurance policy on you. And I was like, what? She said, yeah, because you are living that fast life. You getting it mixed up with this person who is bad news. She phrased it in another way, but pretty much that's what it meant. And I was like, oh, is that what you did? And I had a sinking feeling. Well, lo and behold, she was right, because that person wanted to kill me later on. So you see, it doesn't have to be alcohol, drugs, smoking, or what have you, but you got some individuals who they are out here and they're feeding into all of the hype, the negative stuff that's going on in media, while they're also running in the arms of this one and that one. Some of them got diseases. Some of them are just mentally disturbed. And if this person or persons in your family want to continue to, take on this risky behavior, you might as well have a life insurance policy on them. I don't care if it's a son or daughter, a cheating spouse, a parent who's just thinking he or she is still so young and they like to have a whole lot of fun. Well, that's what you do. Because once again, when you see, whether it's in a cartoon, a sign, a symbol, a color, people talking in code, people shaking hands in code, or what have you, don't take that sort of thing lightly. There's always a game plan. There's always something bigger behind the scenes. What you see isn't always what you see or what you've always known to be true. There are those who take oaths, and the types of oaths that they take are demonic in origin. They date all the way back to biblical times, where men were giving up their own brothers for some gold, for some silver, for the essential oils and the fine fabrics, linens, and so forth, a piece of land or what have you. And what happens is sometimes there's the collateral damage. Many of us, collateral damage along the way. I really didn't mean for this to happen. However, it's war, and we win some and we lose some. That's the mentality. That's the mentality of those who are not seen in front of the media, but they got a whole lot of influence, a whole lot of power behind the scenes. They've got puppets. Where there's puppets, there's puppet masters. And these things that you say, well, how does it all relate? It relates because it all comes back to money. It comes back to who owns what, who's got vested interests, who is going to be able to benefit from the crisis, and who is going to lose. And when there's monopolies, there are those individuals who run those monopolies who do not want the competition. They don't even want the potential to show up and take from them. Because there are those who are pretty well equipped, could be potential competition. Well, we don't want you either. So as we are seeing more events unfold, always look behind the chaos. There's the chaos that's in front, but then there is the chaos that's behind the scenes, and there's some type of order being established. And do pay attention to executive orders as well, because that's always something that shows up when you least expect it. Because somebody is saying, wait a minute, we could actually benefit if you create this order that will. Okay. So I thank those of you all who have been tuning in for a long time. And I also thank those of you all who have recently given. And I ask that the Lord just continue to bless you. God is around. God knows what's happening, and that's why God uses his people, places, things, and some of the stuff that we don't even think of to awaken us, because he doesn't want us sleeping, especially when there are crises, pandemics, scripted events, manufactured chaos, and the rest. Stay woke. I thank you as always for taking time out of your busy schedule to listen. You've been listening to YouTube, NM Enterprise 7. Feel free to like, subscribe, comment. We do welcome giving and blessings to you.